A 3 a.m. call is never good news, but this one was not just bad news, it was a veiled death sentence. My brother-in-law built an empire on the illusion of perfection. Tonight, I was going to burn it all down with a single truth. They believed the cut on his arm. They did not see the scars on my sister's soul. That was their fatal mistake. My name is Sarah Locke. I am 40 years old, and I am an investigative journalist for the Veracity Project. My job is to find the truth that powerful people pay to bury. I never expected that job to follow me home, not until the night my world shattered. The call came at 3:17 a.m. The specific, jarring ringtone I had assigned to my sister sliced through the oppressive silence of my apartment, a digital scream in the dark. I fumbled for the phone on the nightstand, my heart already pounding a heavy, primal rhythm against my ribs before I was even fully awake. It was Chloe, my sister, 32 years old. But the voice on the line was not hers. It was a shattered, terrified whisper, clinging to the last thread of coherence. "Sarah," she wept, the sound tearing through the speaker. "I am at the 12th precinct, the Denver 12th. Marcus, God, Sarah. He hit me." A pause, just a fractured second filled with a ragged breath that sounded ripped from her lungs. Then he cut his own arm. He cut himself and told the police I attacked him. My blood did not just run cold, it stopped. It turned to ice and needles in my veins, a complete physiological shutdown. "I tried Dad first," she choked out, a detail so small and so devastating it almost broke me right there. "He did not pick up." Dad, please pick up. The title of her nightmare. Marcus Thorne, 35 years old, the startup king, Denver's golden boy, my sister's husband. To the world, he was a charismatic genius, a philanthropist, a man who built an 8-figure tech empire from a brilliant idea and a perfect camera-ready smile. To me, he was a master of image, a sculptor of public perception. And now, I knew with chilling certainty, he was a sociopath. My journalistic brain clicked into high gear, a cold mechanism overriding the wave of sisterly panic. The facts assembled themselves, hard and sharp. Darvo. It was a classic textbook case. Deny the abuse, attack the accuser, reverse the roles of victim and offender. Marcus was not just defending himself, he was executing a pre-planned strategy. He had not panicked, he had pivoted. He knew that the first report is the one that sticks. He had already set the narrative. He was the victim. Chloe was the hysterical, violent wife. I did not bother changing out of my sweatpants. Keys, wallet, phone. I was out the door in less than 30 seconds, my car roaring to life in the empty concrete garage. I tore through the dark, sleeping streets of Denver, the city lights a meaningless blur of neon and failure. My mind was not a sister's. It was an investigator's. I was analyzing the case, running the angles, compartmentalizing the rage. Marcus was one step ahead. He had initiated the call to the police. He had crafted his evidence the clean, precise, self-inflicted wound. He had isolated Chloe. He knew exactly how the system worked, who to charm, which buttons to push to make the world see what he wanted. Flashes of memory assaulted me, things I had dismissed, things I had minimized, the summer barbecues, the holiday dinners. Every time I had felt that subtle wrongness, that itch of dissonance under my skin when I watched them together, the way Marcus would gently, almost lovingly, interrupt Chloe mid-sentence to clarify her point, effectively silencing her with a smile. The way he helpfully managed her phone, her emails, her social circle, all under the sophisticated guise of protecting her, of making her life easier. It was not protection. It was colonization, a slow, invisible siege of her personality. And I had seen it, noted it, but I had never called it what it was: abuse. I screeched into the parking lot of the 12th precinct. It was exactly what you would expect. a cold, concrete box built in the 1970s, buzzing with a sickly fluorescent light that spilled onto the wet pavement, making the puddles look like oil slicks. I pushed through the heavy glass doors. The air inside hit me instantly, a physical wall of scent, a foul mix of burnt, stale coffee, industrial cleaner, and the unmistakable metallic tang of stale fear. This was a place where stories ended, where truths were buried in poorly written reports. I walked toward the front desk, my posture straightening, my face hardening into the mask I wore for work. The panic receded, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. Marcus had the charm, he had the money, he had the narrative, but I had the truth. I took a deep breath, the foul air filling my lungs. Tonight, I was not Chloe's sister. I was not a woman running on adrenaline and terror. I was Sarah Locke. I was a journalist, and I was going to find the truth and tear his perfect world apart with it. The man at the desk was built like a refrigerator and had the same level of warmth. His name tag read Hansen. He looked up from his computer, his eyes grazing over me with complete indifference. "I need to see my sister, Chloe Thorne," I said, keeping my voice level, fighting the tremor vibrating in my chest. She was brought in. Hansen tapped a few keys, his movements agonizingly slow. "Thorne, Chloe. Yeah, she is here. Domestic disturbance." He looked back at me, his face a mask of bureaucratic apathy. "Family cannot see her. She is being detained for processing. Only her attorney gets access." "She is the victim," I stated, the words tasting like acid. "That is not what the report says," Hansen replied, already looking back at his screen. "Dismissed. This was the wall, the first layer of the cold blue defense." I felt the familiar surge, the professional anger that always served me better than personal panic. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my wallet, flipping it open not to an ID, but to my press credentials. I placed it flat on the high counter. "I am Sarah Locke, with the Veracity Project." Hansen's eyes flickered to the card. A tiny muscle in his jaw twitched. He did not move. "I am here," I continued, my voice dropping into its reporter's cadence, clear, sharp, and promising consequences, "to report on potential police misconduct in the handling of a domestic violence case. I am going to need an official comment on why the victim, who has been assaulted, is the one being detained, while the alleged assailant is, I assume, being offered coffee." Hansen's apathy cracked, replaced by a dull hostility. "You cannot just, Ma'am, Ms. Locke." A new voice cut in, younger, sharper, and laced with something I could not immediately place. I turned. A younger officer, mid-20s, trim, with the name Diaz on his vest, was rushing toward the desk. He looked pale, almost sick. "Officer Hansen, I can handle this," Diaz said quickly, avoiding Hansen's glare. He turned to me, his eyes wide. "Ms. Locke, right, I read your series on the city council zoning fraud. That was something." He was nervous, but as I watched him, I realized it was not respect. It was not admiration for my work. This was fear. His eyes kept darting from me to the hallway behind him. He was afraid of me, Sarah Locke, being here, right now. "We can get you to a waiting area," Diaz offered, his voice slightly too high. "It is more comfortable. Let me just escort you." Hansen grunted, annoyed at being overruled but clearly relieved to have the problem taken off his desk. He waved a hand in dismissal. "Fine. Keep her out of the way." Diaz nodded quickly and motioned for me to follow. The moment we were out of earshot of the desk, stepping into the long, sterile green corridor, his professional demeanor crumbled. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper, his gaze fixed straight ahead. "Listen, Ms. Locke, you need to know what you are walking into." "I already do," I said. "My sister called me." "No," he hissed. "You do not understand. Detective Vance is handling this." personally. The name meant nothing to me, and Diaz stopped for a second, glancing back toward the booking desk before pulling me near a small alcove by a water fountain. Vance and Thorne, Marcus Thorne, they are friends. Like, friends. They golf together, West Denver Country Club, every Saturday. There it was. The chill I felt earlier in my apartment returned, but this time it was glacial. It was not just Darvo. It was corruption. It was a setup. Where are they? I demanded. Diaz just nodded toward the end of the hall, to a glass-paneled office, a detective's office, the good room, not the linoleum interrogation rooms where Chloe was surely sitting. I moved before Diaz could stop me. I walked straight toward that office. The blinds were partially open, and I stopped just outside the glass, my feet rooted to the floor by the scene inside. There he was, Marcus Thorne. He was not in handcuffs. He was not in a holding cell. He was sitting in a comfortable guest chair, leaning forward, talking animatedly. He was wearing an absurdly expensive-looking cashmere sweater, the sleeve on his left arm carefully, deliberately rolled up. And there, wrapped around his forearm, was the wound. It was not a gash. It was not a chaotic defensive wound. It was a neat, clean, almost surgical line, covered by a pristine white bandage, applied with textbook precision. He was laughing. I watched, my breath caught in my throat, as Detective Vance, a heavy-set man in a cheap suit, his face red with false sincerity, laughed along with him. Vance reached out and clapped Marcus firmly on the shoulder, a gesture of absolute reassurance, of male solidarity. "Do not worry, buddy. We got this. We will handle the crazy woman." Marcus glanced up, his gaze sweeping the hallway. For one terrifying electric second, his eyes met mine through the glass. His smile did not falter. It widened. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated triumph. He knew I was there. He knew I was watching. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that he had already won. This was not an investigation. It was a gentleman's agreement, sealed over bad coffee in a dirty precinct, based on a lie fabricated over a game of golf. I had walked in here hoping to find my sister. Instead, I found a conspiracy. Diaz led me away from the glass office, his hand barely touching my elbow, guiding me to a different part of the station. We went through a set of double doors into a windowless, beige-painted holding area. The air was dead. He stopped in front of a door marked Family Waiting Room 3. It was a euphemism. It was a box to store people's misery. "She is in here," he said, his voice low. "Vance has not formally interviewed her yet. He is too busy with Mr. Thorne." He opened the door, and I stepped inside. Chloe was a shadow. She was huddled on a hard plastic chair, her knees drawn up to her chest, her arms wrapped around her shins. She looked impossibly small, a 32-year-old woman reduced to a terrified child. Her hair was matted on one side, and her face was puffy and stained with tears. She was staring at a spot on the floor, rocking almost imperceptibly. She did not look up when the door opened. "Chloe," I said. Her head snapped up, her eyes red-rimmed, vacant, focused on me. The emptiness vanished, replaced by a fresh, agonizing wave of despair. It was a sound I had never heard, a guttural sob of complete surrender. "Sarah," she launched herself off the chair and into my arms, collapsing against me. Her body was trembling violently, uncontrollably, like a machine shaking itself apart. I held her, my own hands shaking, my journalistic detachment dissolving into raw, fiery hot rage. I buried my face in her hair, which smelled of sweat and Marcus's expensive cologne. "It is okay," I murmured, lies that we both needed. "I am here. I have got you. It is okay." I held her tightly, trying to pour my own strength into her, and that is when I felt it. Through the thin material of her sweater, on her upper arm, there was a lump. It was hard, raised, and did not feel like a new injury. It was not the soft swelling of a fresh bruise. My blood, which I thought could get no colder, turned to absolute zero. I gently eased her back, just enough to look at her. "Chloe, what is on your arm?" Her eyes widened in panic. She tried to pull away, to curl back into herself. "It is nothing, Sarah. Please, not now." "Show me," I said. It was not a request. It was the command of an older sister who had just seen the real monster. Her hand trembled as she reached for the hem of her left sleeve. She could not do it. I took her hand, my own touch surprisingly gentle, and I slowly pushed the knitted fabric up past her elbow, toward her shoulder. It was not a bruise. It was not a cut. It was a scar, pale, waxy, and perfectly, sickeningly round, the size of a dime. I had seen burns like it before, in photos from stories I had edited, but I had never seen one on someone I loved. It was the unmistakable, deliberate brand of a lit cigarette. The room tilted, my breath hitched. I looked from the scar to her face. "Chloe," I whispered, my voice unrecognizable. When did he do this?" She broke. The tears were not frantic anymore. They were a quiet, hopeless stream. "6 months ago," she confessed, her voice barely audible. "After that gala at the museum, I said the wrong thing to the mayor's wife. He waited until we got home. 6 months. I felt my stomach heave. 6 months, and you said nothing. You hid this. I was afraid." She wept, her shame palpable. "I was so afraid. Afraid he would do it again." She shook her head, a violent, negative motion. "No, I mean, yes. But not just that. He threatened me. He threatened to kill you." It was a statement. "No, Sarah," she choked out, grabbing my shirt. "He threatened to kill you." I froze. "What? Not kill," she clarified, her words tumbling out in a frantic rush. "Destroy. He threatened to destroy you. He knew about your investigation. The city councilor. The one you have been working on for almost a year." My blood pressure spiked. That story was my life's work. It was the biggest case of corruption the Veracity Project had ever tackled, and it was built on a foundation of anonymous sources and meticulous data. "He told me. He said he knew you were close," Chloe continued, her voice cracking. "He said he had contacts who could fabricate an entire paper trail, bank transfers, encrypted emails, a fake source who would come forward and swear you paid him. He said he would make it look like you fabricated the entire story. He said he would ruin you. Sarah." I stared at her, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. "He said he would not just end your career," she whispered, "but he would bankrupt the Veracity Project with lawsuits. He said he would destroy your reputation, your name, everything you have ever worked for, and that he would do it just to prove he could." It was a perfect prison. He had not just trapped her with his fists and his temper. He had found her loyalty, her love for me, and he had twisted it into a shackle. He had turned my life's work into the bars of her cage. Every day she stayed silent. Every time she hid a new bruise or a new burn. She was not protecting herself. She was protecting me. I pulled the sleeve back down, covering the waxy, obscene evidence of his cruelty. The rage I felt in the hallway was gone. It had been replaced by something colder, heavier, and infinitely more dangerous. This was not just about a lie and a self-inflicted wound in a police station. This was about a 6-month-old scar and a threat that had held my sister's life hostage. He had not just attacked my sister. He had aimed a weapon directly at my life, and he had used her as the trigger. I left Chloe with a bottle of water and a promise. "Do not say another word to anyone but me. Understand?" She nodded, her eyes still hollow but with a new flicker of trust. I walked out of that beige room and my entire chemical makeup had changed. The shock was gone. The grief was gone. All that was left was a pure, cold element of rage. I found Diaz in the hallway, still pretending to be busy. "I need to speak to Detective Vance," I said. "And I need to speak to Marcus Thorne. Now, as Chloe's family representative." Diaz looked even more terrified. "Ms. Locke, I do not think that is a good idea. Vance is—" "I do not care what Vance is." I cut him off. "Tell him he can either talk to me in that office, or he can talk to my lawyer and the media relations department at the Veracity Project. His choice." Diaz flinched and scurried away. I stood in the middle of that ugly green hallway, a fixed point, unmoving. I watched him go into Vance's office. I saw him speak. I saw Vance sigh, an exaggerated puff of annoyance. And I saw Marcus. He looked up, smiled his perfect, charming smile, and stood. He walked out of the office first, leaving Vance behind. He strode toward me, his face a mask of beautifully crafted, theatrical anguish. It was a performance, and I was now the audience. "Sarah," he breathed, his voice rich with false emotion. He actually reached for my arm. I stepped back. He pulled his hand away, feigning hurt. "Sarah, thank God you are here. I am so glad you came. Chloe, she is not well. She lost control." I said nothing. I just stared at him, my gaze flat and dead. I was letting the silence do the work. He faltered for just a second, unused to an audience that did not respond to his cues. But he was a professional. He recovered instantly. "She was drinking," he said, his voice dropping to a confidential, man-to-man tone, even though I was a woman. "She started accusing me of things. Insane things. Pure jealousy. I tried to calm her down, and she snapped. She went to the kitchen. She grabbed a knife. This little paring knife." He held up his hands in a gesture of helplessness. "I just defended myself. I tried to get it away from her. She cut me. Sarah, look." He presented his bandaged arm like a trophy. Detective Vance waddled out of the office to stand beside his star witness, crossing his arms over his stained tie. "The physical evidence is pretty clear-cut, Ms. Locke," Vance said, his voice a low, bored rumble. "We have the weapon, which has her prints on it. We have the victim's injuries." He nodded at Marcus. "And her testimony is, well, it is inconsistent. She is barely coherent." I finally spoke, my voice coming out as a blade. I did not look at Marcus. I looked at Vance. "Inconsistent. Detective or traumatized? What is the official opinion of the EMT you called to examine her?" Vance blinked. "EMT, an emergency medical technician." I clarified, as if speaking to a child. "Or a forensic nurse?" "You did have one examine her. Correct. You are required to, in a domestic assault case." Vance's dull flush deepened. "We are processing the scene. We will follow all procedures." "So you have not," I stated. "Have you photographed her injuries? The ones that are not as neat as his—" I gestured to Marcus. "Have you taken pictures of the fresh bruises on her neck, the ones shaped like fingers?" Vance was officially flustered. "We will conduct a full investigation, Ms. Locke. Now. I am not done." I turned my full attention to Marcus. He was still holding his wounded arm, his performance of the concerned husband slipping. His eyes were cold. The mask was coming off. "Your arm," I said, pointing. "The cut. It is on your left forearm." "Yes," he said, his voice harder now. "She had the knife." I put my arm up to block. "But you are right-handed, Marcus," I said. "I have watched you sign checks at family dinners. I have watched you play tennis. You are dominant in your right hand. Your instinct, your trained reflex, would be to block with your dominant hand. Or, more likely, to use your dominant hand to disarm her." His smile was gone. I pressed on, my voice cutting through the stale air of the precinct. "And that knife. You said it yourself. A paring knife. 3 inches. Maybe. The wound you are displaying required at least 10 stitches, according to the bandage. That is a deep, clean cut. Marcus, it is not a frantic, shallow slash from a small blade in a struggle. It is not a defensive wound. I took one step closer, close enough that I could smell the faintest trace of antiseptic beneath his cologne. That, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than a shout, is a controlled incision. That is a wound that looks like you sat on the edge of the bathtub, gritted your teeth, and carefully, deliberately, drew the blade across your own arm to create the perfect piece of evidence. The air crackled. Diaz, who had been hovering by the wall, looked like he was going to vomit. Vance looked outraged. But Marcus's mask of self-assurance finally had a hairline crack. A tiny, almost imperceptible tremor ran through his jaw. He had not anticipated this. He had prepared for a crying, hysterical sister. He had prepared for an angry, emotional relative. He had not prepared for an investigator. Marcus and Vance stared at me, their expressions a mix of disbelief and pure fury. I had overplayed my hand, but I had also planted the seed. I gave them both one last flat look and turned on my heel, walking away before they could formulate a response. I did not go back to Chloe. Not yet. I needed Diaz. He was the weak link. His fear when I first arrived was not just standard police anxiety around a reporter. It was specific. It was personal. I scanned the hallways and found him where all nervous people end up by a vending machine, pretending to study a row of stale chips as if it held the answers to his life. I approached him quietly. He heard me and his shoulders hunched, his whole body tensing for a blow. "Officer Diaz," I said, my voice low and calm. He turned slowly. A bead of sweat was already forming at his hairline. "Ms. Locke, you really should not be antagonizing Detective Vance like that." "I am not interested in Vance," I said, stepping closer, closing off his escape route. "I am interested in the truth, and I think you are, too. I am just a cop, ma'am. I do my job." "I know," I said, adopting a sympathetic tone. "And I know what it is like when good cops get caught in a bad system." I let that hang in the air. "I am about to publish a very big story, a corruption story. It goes all the way up to the city council." Diaz's face went white. He started to sweat in earnest now, his eyes darting around the empty corridor. "I do not know anything about that. I do not. I do not know what you are talking about." "I think you do," I said, leaning in, dropping my voice so he had to strain to hear me. This was the bluff. It had to land. My story is about money, illicit payments, money being funneled through private clubs, social events, places like the West Denver Country Club. His breath hitched. He looked at me, his eyes wide with pure, unadulterated terror. "I know about the payments. Diaz." I lied, my voice full of absolute certainty. "I know Vance is on the take, and I know Marcus Thorne is right there with him, pulling the strings." He shattered. It was not a crack, it was a full implosion. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in, and pulled me into a small, dark janitor's alcove, the reek of bleach and old mops filling my nostrils. "You do not understand," he whispered, his voice trembling so hard he could barely form the words. He was shaking. "You think I am afraid of Vance. You think I am afraid of you." He let go of my arm and put his hands on his head, his fingers clenching in his own hair. I had a debt, a gambling debt, a big one. Over 50,000. I was going to lose my house, my job, everything. And Marcus paid it. I finished for him. He nodded, a jerky, pathetic motion. He did not just pay it. He bought it. He owns the marker. He helped me. One friend to another. And now he owns me. He calls. I answer. He needs a problem in the system to go away. I make it go away. He needed to know if Chloe ever called the cops before. I am the one who checked the system for him. The revelation was ugly and total. This was not friendship. This was leverage. Marcus had a man on the inside. Diaz looked at me, his face a ruin of desperation. He will destroy me. If I cross him, he will not just call in the debt. He will end me. He will say I took a bribe. He is destroying my sister right now, I said, my voice like ice. He is controlling you, Diaz, but he is burning her. You are his tool. She is his victim. He saw it then. He saw that I was not a threat to him. I was his only way out. He was trapped in the same web as Chloe, just in a different way. I cannot testify, he breathed. He will know it was me. He will... God, he will kill me. I do not need you to testify, I said. I need you to point. I need evidence. He is smart, but he is arrogant. He made a mistake. Where is it? He thought for a long, agonizing second, his mind clearly racing. Then he spoke, the words coming in a torrent. He did not make the first 911 call, he whispered. A neighbor did. From the condo 2 floors down, an anonymous call reporting a woman screaming, "Get off me," and the sound of breaking glass. It came in at 7:43 p.m. I saw it on the log when I came on duty. When did Marcus call? I asked. 8:03 p.m. A full 20 minutes later, he reported he was the one who had been attacked. Vance buried the first call. He logged it as unfounded and attached it to Marcus's report as a related but confused civilian. This was it, the timeline. That is not all, Diaz said, his eyes wild. The lobby, the security cameras. He lives in a high-tech building, right. He is Marcus Thorne. He disabled the camera in their private elevator lobby. He used his phone app. He is the admin. He shut it down at 8 p.m., right before he called 911. My heart sank. So the footage is gone? No, Diaz whispered, grabbing my arm again. He thought it was. He is a tech genius, but he does not know the building's shitty system. The server. It crashes all the time. It reboots automatically. He shut it down at 8, but the system rebooted at 8:05 p.m. It was back on. It recorded everything after that. After what? After he called the cops, Diaz said, his meaning landing like a punch. It recorded him, alone, after Chloe was already gone, pacing the lobby, checking his reflection, and waiting for the cops to arrive. He was not bleeding. He was not hurt. He was just waiting. Diaz's information was a tactical nuke. The 20-minute gap between the neighbor's desperate 911 call and Marcus's cool, calculated one. The video footage of him, uninjured and calm, pacing his lobby after Chloe was already in police custody. It was enough to shred his victim story. But it was all digital. It was all logged inside this building, a building controlled by Detective Vance, a man who played golf with the monster. A hard drive could be wiped for maintenance. A 911 call log could be corrupted. All Vance needed was one plausible excuse, and all of Diaz's evidence would evaporate. I needed something physical, something Marcus did not know about. I stormed back into the beige waiting room. Chloe was still huddled on the chair, but her eyes, wide and terrified, snapped to mine the second I opened the door. "Sarah, what is going on?" They said they are going to transfer me." "Not yet," I said, my voice low and urgent. I crouched in front of her, taking her hands. They were like ice. "Chloe, I need you to think. I need you to think harder than you have ever thought. Is there anything you hid? A journal? A different phone? A recording? Anything he does not know about? A place he would not look?" She shook her head, a fresh wave of despair washing over her. "He controlled everything. My phone, my computer. He had software on them. He watched me all the time. There was nowhere to hide anything." "Think," I insisted, my grip tightening on her hands. A place that was yours, not his. A place he would find beneath him. She closed her eyes, her brow knotting in concentration. Her breath hitched. He would never go. No, that is stupid. What? Tell me. What is stupid? My old storage locker, she whispered, her voice faint. In the basement of the building. It is full of my college textbooks, my old art projects, things from before I met him. He would never go down there. He always said it was full of dust and poor people's memories. What is in there, Chloe? Her eyes flew open, focusing on me with a sudden, sharp clarity I had not seen all night. The music box, she breathed. I knew it instantly. A heavy, dark, cherry-wood box our grandmother had left us. It played a tinny, haunting version of Claire de Lune. It was the one piece of clutter Chloe had fought him to keep. What about it? I asked, my heart beginning to hammer. What did you hide? Something, she said, her voice gaining a thread of strength. Something I did not know what else to do with. I put it there. Months ago. I wrapped it in my graduation gown. But, oh God, Sarah. The light in her eyes died. The lock. He changed the lock on the locker. About a month ago. He said the building management was requiring upgraded security for insurance. I never got a new key. He knew, or he suspected. He had locked her out of her own past. I pulled out my phone and stepped back into the hallway, my mind racing. I speed-dialed my colleague at the Veracity Project, Alex. He was our night owl, the guy who lived on black coffee and paranoia, and the only person I trusted to do something illegal for the right reasons. He picked up on the first ring. Alex, I need you. Drop everything, I said, my voice low and fast. I am sending you an address. It is Chloe's building. In the basement, there is a storage unit, 27B. There is a new, high-grade padlock on it. I need you to get past it. A bolt cutter, a crowbar. I do not care. I do not care if you set off an alarm. Get in. Now. Sarah, what the hell is going on? Is this for the council story? This is bigger, I said. Inside that locker, there is an old music box. Dark wood. Get it. I need what is inside it. Call me the second you have it in your hand. I hung up before he could ask another question. The next 30 minutes were the longest, loudest silence of my life. I went back and sat with Chloe, but I was not there. I was in a basement, listening for the snap of a lock. Vance walked by the open door twice, his face a thundercloud of impatience. He was ready to move Chloe, to bury this. The system was closing in. My phone vibrated violently in my pocket. I leapt to my feet and ran back into the hall. It was Alex. I am in, he said, his voice a harsh, breathless whisper. Jesus. Sarah, that was not a padlock. It was a bank vault. I found the box. It is just a music box. It is playing. I could hear the tinny, ghostly notes of Claire de Lune over the line. Look inside it, I commanded. Under the velvet lining. It should be loose. I heard him fumbling, the music abruptly stopping. Okay, the lining. It is a false bottom. Got it. There is something. But, Sarah, it is not a drive. It is not a tape. It is a little book, a small black moleskin notebook. My blood went cold. What is in it? Alex. It is numbers, he said, his journalist's curiosity now fully engaged. Pages and pages of them. Dates, account numbers, names. Apex Dynamics is written on the first page. Apex Dynamics, Marcus's groundbreaking tech startup. The company that, according to every financial reporter in Denver, had no actual product but had somehow attracted over $300 million in venture capital. Keep reading, I said, my voice shaking. They look like accounting entries, Alex said, his voice dropping. But there are 2 sets. Source and final. The source numbers are… Whoa, these are huge, millions. And the final numbers are all different, smaller. They are… Sarah, this looks like a wash. This is a ledger. So, it hit me then, a realization so obvious I felt blind for not seeing it. Chloe, her degree. It was not in art or communications. She has an accounting degree, I said, the words falling out of my mouth. She graduated top of her class. I am looking at a ledger. Sarah, Alex confirmed, his voice grim. A handwritten, meticulous ledger of what looks like a massive money laundering operation. And the handwriting. It is not yours. It was Chloe's, my sister, the hysterical wife, the unstable attacker. She had not just been his victim. She had been his prisoner. He had not just been beating her. He had been forcing her, with her own precise, beautiful handwriting, to fix his books, to launder his dirty money. I finally understood. The threat to ruin my career was not just a piece of brilliant, sadistic psychological torture. It was his insurance policy. He was not just silencing a battered wife. He was silencing his primary, unwilling accomplice in a multi-million-dollar criminal empire. This was not a domestic dispute. This was not a precinct matter. This was federal, and I was holding the key. Alex, do not move. I am coming to you. Meet me at the front entrance. Now! I hung up and sprinted down the hallway, bursting through the double doors just as a sleek, menacing, jet-black Escalade pulled up to the curb, gliding to a stop with the silent arrogance of apex predator. The driver's side door opened, but no driver emerged. Instead, the rear door opened, and a man in a suit so expensive it looked like armor stepped out. He was tall, perfectly groomed, with silver hair and a face that looked carved from unforgiving marble. This was not just any lawyer. This was Julian Thorne, 50 years old, Marcus Thorne's older, far more dangerous shadow. He was not just Marcus's personal attorney. He was the chief counsel for Apex Dynamics, the man who had structured the very shell companies I was now holding evidence of. He did not walk into the precinct. He made an entrance. He moved through the lobby as if he owned the building, his expensive leather shoes making no sound on the dirty linoleum. He did not stop at the desk. He did not wait for Hanson. He strode directly to where Detective Vance was hovering, having emerged from his office to see what the commotion was. Detective Vance. Thorne's voice was not loud, but it cut through the room, a rich baritone dripping with contempt. I am Julian Thorne. I represent Marcus Thorne and his interests. Vance, who had been a lion with me, was suddenly a fawning cub. Mr. Thorne. Yes, of course. We are just finishing up here. Your client has been incredibly helpful. My client, Thorne said, cutting him off, has been victimized, and he has cooperated enough. His patience is at an end. We are demanding that the suspect, Chloe Miller, he used her maiden name, a deliberate, dismissive legal tactic, be charged immediately with aggravated assault and transferred to the county jail. Now. He turned, his cold, reptilian gaze landing on me. He had not been introduced. He did not need to be. He knew exactly who I was. Sarah Locke, he said. It was not a question. I know your work. I know your little nonprofit blog. He smiled, a thin, bloodless expression. I am putting you on notice, personally and professionally. If you or your project print one slanderous word about this incident, one single insinuation against Mr. Thorne, I will sue you into oblivion. I will file for defamation, libel, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I will personally bankrupt your organization and see you disbarred as a journalist. Are we clear? The threat hung in the air, heavy and absolute. This was the weapon Marcus had held over Chloe. I was now staring down the barrel of it. Vance, now fully backed by the power of real money, puffed up like a toad. He turned to Diaz, who had been trying to blend into the wall. Diaz, you heard the man. Get the transfer paperwork. I want her processed and moved. Now stop wasting time. This was it. The window was closing. Once she was in the county system, buried in a cell, getting to her would be almost impossible. Diaz, to his credit, looked me in the eye for 1 second. I saw the terror there, but I also saw the spark of his own resentment. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. Yes, sir. Right away, sir. He walked, not to the processing desk, but to a different computer terminal. He began typing, but I could see his movements were deliberate, slow. He was starting a new file, not opening an existing one. He was not just typing, he was mistyping. He would fill out a line, pause, grimace, and his fingers would slam the backspace key, deleting his own work. He was buying me time. I will be right outside, Thorne said to Vance, dismissing him. He turned and walked back out the front doors to wait by his Escalade, a king waiting for his chariot. I slipped out the side door into the pre-dawn chill. Alex's car, a beat-up 1990s sedan, was parked across the street. He was standing beside it, vibrating with adrenaline. He saw me and shoved the small, black book into my hand. Sarah, whatever this is, it is bad, he said. I clutched the ledger. It felt warm, heavy, like a bomb. I looked back at the precinct. Julian Thorne was looking at his watch, a picture of impatience. Diaz was a good man, but he was a clumsy one. He had just accidentally dropped a stack of papers. I looked at the ledger. I looked at the station. 30 minutes. Diaz had bought me 30 minutes, tops. I had 30 minutes to find a power strong enough to fight the monster in that building, and the devil who was waiting for him outside. I stood in the cold, misty air, the small black book feeling like a lead weight in my hand. Alex looked at me, his face pale. Sarah, what is the play we cannot publish this? Not yet. Thorne will bury us in injunctions before it ever sees the light of day. He meant what he said. He will, I agreed, my voice a low hum. He and Vance will take this ledger, and they will burn it, and they will put Chloe in a cell where she can never testify. So what do? Alex asked. We go over their heads, I said. We go so far over their heads they will not even see us coming. I walked away from the station, to the corner of the street, under a buzzing, flickering streetlight. I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over a contact I had not touched in 3 years, a name I kept purely as an insurance policy, a break glass in case of emergency contact that, until tonight, I had found morally repulsive. Tonight, I was smashing the glass. I hit the call button. It rang 3 times, and a groggy, furious voice answered. This better be a mistake. Special Agent Kendrick, I said, my voice steady. It is Sarah Locke. There was a heavy sigh on the other end of the line. Kendrick was a senior agent at the Denver FBI field office, white-collar crimes division. Locke it is. It is almost 4 a.m. Do you know what kind of line you are crossing? I do, I said, and I am calling in the favor, the one you said I would never need. 3 years ago, I had a story, a rock-solid, confirmed sources story about Kendrick's eldest son, who had been involved in a university admissions fraud scheme. It was a good story, a career maker for a young reporter. I had brought it to Kendrick, and I had traded it. I had killed the story. In exchange, I got one. No questions asked marker, redeemable at any time. He had hated me for it, but he had agreed. You are really pulling that trigger now, he asked, his voice suddenly wide awake, the sleep vanishing, replaced by a cold dread. This cannot be a parking ticket, Sarah. It is not, I said, the words coming out fast and precise. I am standing outside the DPD's 12th precinct. I am holding physical hard copy evidence of a massive, multi-million-dollar wire fraud and money laundering operation being run through a shell company called Apex Dynamics. Absolute silence. I could hear him breathing. Apex was his white whale. His office had been trying to find a way into Marcus Thorne's genius company for 18 months and had hit a wall of lawyers and digital dead ends every time. "You are lying," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I am not," I said. "I have the book, the real book, handwritten by their internal accountant, who is currently being held inside this precinct on false assault charges, filed by the man she was laundering the money for." "Jesus Christ," Kendrick whispered. "That is not all," I continued, pressing my advantage. "The man who filed the charges is Marcus Thorne, and he is being aided and abetted by the detective on duty, a man named Vance, who is a personal friend and, I suspect, on his payroll. They are actively suppressing evidence. They are threatening me, and they are preparing to transfer the accountant to county jail right now to bury her. This is a criminal conspiracy, and the DPD is in on it. Those are the biggest accusations you could possibly make." "Locke," Kendrick said, his voice hard. "You need more than a book you say you have. I am sending 2 things to your phone, right now." While I was talking, Alex had already taken a picture of the most damning page in the ledger with his own phone. I had him send it to me. I forwarded it to Kendrick. "That is the appetizer," I said. "That is a page from the ledger. You will notice the source and final columns. That is a $9 million discrepancy on one page alone." I heard a sharp intake of breath. "And this," I said, "is the main course." Diaz, in his frantic confession, had slipped me a folded piece of paper. On it was a URL, a link to a private cloud server where he had, with incredible risk, uploaded the relevant files from the DPD's own system. "Check your text messages again." I sent him the link. That is a time-stamped security camera snapshot from the building's internal system. It was acquired by a clean cop who is being crushed. It shows Marcus Thorne entering his apartment lobby at 7:55 p.m., perfectly healthy. The next shot, from a different angle at the elevator bank at 8:01 p.m., shows him emerging alone, with a professionally bandaged, bleeding wound on his arm. He did it to himself. Agent. He fabricated the entire assault. And Detective Vance is in possession of this same footage and is charging her. The line was silent for 10 full seconds. I could hear the faint sound of a keyboard clacking in the background. He was at a computer. This is credible," he finally said. His voice was no longer that of a man woken from sleep. It was the voice of a federal agent who had just been handed the case of his career on a silver platter. "Vance is moving her," I said, the urgency returning. "His high-priced lawyer, Julian Thorne, is standing outside. You have maybe 30 minutes, maybe less." "I am 20 minutes out," Kendrick replied. "I am waking a federal magistrate right now to sign a warrant. We are taking jurisdiction. Do not, under any circumstances, let that book out of your sight. And Sarah, do not let them move your sister. I do not care what you have to do." He hung up. I turned to Alex. "Get back to the office. Get ready to publish. I will call you when it is done." He nodded, his eyes wide, and drove off. I shoved the small black book deep into the waistband of my pants, pulling my sweater down over it. I took a deep breath, the cold air burning my lungs, and I walked back into the 12th precinct, a walking, talking piece of evidence, waiting for the cavalry to arrive. I walked back inside, the ledger a cold weight against my skin. The atmosphere in the precinct had grown frantic. Julian Thorne had come back inside, his patience obviously expired. He was standing next to Vance, his arms crossed, radiating impatience. "Vance, what is the delay?" Thorne demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "My client is the victim here, and your officer seems incapable of filling out a simple transfer form." "Diaz!" Vance roared, his face purple. "Get her out here. Get her in the car. Am I not making myself clear?" Diaz was backed against the processing desk, his hands visibly shaking as he fumbled with a clipboard. He looked at me, his eyes screaming for help. "Right now, detective." Diaz fumbled, dropping the clipboard with a loud clatter. Papers scattered across the floor. "You incompetent!" Vance started to say, moving toward him. At that exact moment, the precinct's heavy glass front doors burst open. It was not a knock. It was an invasion. The doors slammed against the walls, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the cramped lobby. It was not one man. It was six. 6 people in dark blue tactical vests with the 3 bright yellow letters stamped across their backs. FBI. They moved with a speed and precision that made the local cops look like statues. They fanned out, securing the room in less than 3 seconds. Leading them was the man from the phone, Special Agent Kendrick. He was tall, graying, and his eyes were like chips of ice. He strode directly into the center of the room, his gaze sweeping over everyone and landing, with absolute finality, on Detective Vance. Julian Thorne stepped forward, his arrogance so ingrained he could not help himself. "Who in the hell are you? This is a DPD precinct. You have no Special Agent Kendrick, FBI," Kendrick announced, his voice booming in the suddenly silent room. "And as of right now, this is a federal crime scene." He turned to Vance, who looked as if he had been struck by lightning. "Detective Vance, we are assuming jurisdiction over this case under Title 18 of the U.S. Code. All transfer procedures will stop. Your officers will not touch the suspect, Chloe Miller. They will not touch the complainant, Marcus Thorne. They will not touch any evidence. Is that clear?" The shift in power was instantaneous. It was absolute. The air crackled. Thorne recovered first, his face a mask of pure indignation. "Jurisdiction over a domestic dispute. That is the most absurd thing I have ever heard. You have no authority here, Agent. None. This is a local matter." It stopped being a local matter. "Mr. Thorne," Kendrick said, pulling a folded document from his jacket pocket. "The moment your client's company, Apex Dynamics, began laundering money across state lines." He unfolded the paper. "This is a federal warrant. We do have authority." He did not look at Thorne again. He looked past him, directly at Marcus, who had been watching from his comfortable seat in Vance's office. The smile, finally, completely gone from his face. "Marcus Thorne," Kendrick declared, "you are under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and money laundering." Marcus turned a shade of white I had never seen on a living person. It was the color of ash. This was the contingency he had never planned for. The threat he had used against me my career, my reputation was nothing. He had never imagined I would have a bigger weapon. He looked at me, his eyes wide, not with anger, but with pure, uncomprehending shock. 2 agents moved past Vance, entered the office, and pulled Marcus out of his chair. "You cannot do this," Marcus yelled, his voice a high-pitched, panicked squeal, all the smooth baritone gone. Julian, do something." He began to struggle, a real, undignified, thrashing panic, as one of the agents pulled his hands behind his back and the metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the lobby. "My arm! You are hurting my arm!" he screamed, trying to protect his fabricated wound. "Julian." But Julian Thorne was silent, his face like stone, his brilliant legal mind racing, calculating, and clearly coming to blank. He had been outmaneuvered, and he knew it. As the agents hauled Marcus toward the door, Kendrick turned his attention back to Vance. The detective was frozen, his mouth half open, his entire petty kingdom collapsing in on him. A female agent stepped up to Kendrick's side, holding another warrant. She looked at Vance with utter disdain. "Detective Vance," she said, her voice clear and sharp, "we have a federal warrant to search your office, your home, and your vehicle on suspicion of accepting bribes, obstruction of justice, and tampering with evidence in a federal investigation." Vance made a small, choking sound. His legs gave out. He did not fall, he just collapsed. He sank backward into the nearest desk chair, his body deflating, his eyes staring blankly at the wall. The bully of the 12th Precinct had been reduced to a heap of cheap fabric and panicked sweat. Kendrick looked at me. One. Sharp nod. The cavalry had arrived. The agents did not take Marcus to a DPD holding cell. They cleared out the very interrogation room where Vance had been schmoozing him. It was now a federal room. I watched them sit him down. The perfect, charming mask was gone, replaced by the blotchy, terrified face of a cornered rat. He was yelling, his voice cracking, demanding his lawyer. Julian Thorne was not with him. Thorne was in the hallway, surrounded by 2 other agents, his own face a pale, static mask. He was trying to look calm, but I could see the muscle twitching in his temple. He was not just Marcus's lawyer. He was Apex's lawyer. He was implicated. Ms. Locke, the female agent, the one who had served the warrant on Vance, touched my arm. "Let's get you and your sister somewhere safe. We have medics on the way for her." She led us back to the small beige room where this had all begun, but it felt different now. The walls were not closing in. They were a sanctuary. A few minutes later, 2 EMTs, a man and a woman, entered. They were gentle, their voices soft. "Ma'am," the woman said to Chloe, "we need to take a look at you. We are here to help." For the first time, Chloe uncurled. She let them look at her neck. She let them see the bruises. I had already given the small ledger to Kendrick, who had bagged it as evidence. He was now in the interrogation room with Marcus. I stood by the door, watching through the small, wired glass window. "Here is the deal. Marcus," Kendrick was saying, his voice a calm rumble. "We have the books. We have the server logs. The money laundering case is airtight. You are looking at 20 years, minimum. But you cooperate right now. You tell us who your partners are, who else is in on this, and maybe we can talk to the U.S. attorney about a recommendation. Maybe—" Marcus, incredibly, laughed. It was a high-pitched, hysterical sound. "You have nothing. You have nothing. Julian will have this all thrown out in an hour. You have no idea who I am. Julian." He screamed toward the door. "Julian, get in here and handle these idiots." Kendrick just sighed and shook his head. He walked out of the room, leaving a fuming Marcus alone with a silent agent. Kendrick walked directly to where Julian Thorne was standing. "Your client is uncooperative. He seems to be under the impression you are going to save him." Thorne looked at Kendrick. His eyes were dead. He was calculating his own survival. "Agent," Thorne said, his voice a low, confidential murmur, "I require a private word. With you, and with the U.S. attorney, as soon as one can be reached. I believe I can be of significant assistance to your case." Kendrick's eyebrows shot up. "You are waiving privilege. I am offering," Thorne corrected, "a proffer, to save my own skin. Agent, yes, my client is not just a white-collar criminal. He is unstable. He is violent. This was it. The final, ultimate betrayal. The lawyer was cutting his client loose to save himself. "Unstable how?" Kendrick asked, his voice pure business. "He's a liability," Thorne said, his voice dripping with sudden, feigned disgust. "To prove my good faith, I am going to give you something my client gave me. As insurance." He was paranoid. He bragged about it. Thorne reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a small metal device, a flash drive. He filmed her. He had hidden cameras in their home. He filmed everything. He sent me this drive weeks ago, boasting that if she ever left him, he would destroy her with her own words. He said he had done the same to previous partners. Kendrick took the drive as if it were radioactive. "That," Thorne said, his voice a venomous whisper, "is a link, a key. It gives you administrator access to a private offshore cloud server. On it, you will find, well, you will find all the insurance you need. Years of it." Kendrick did not wait. He handed the drive to the female agent, who slotted it into a laptop. I watched from the doorway, my heart in my throat. They did not have to look far. The server was full. It was an archive of his sadism. There was video, time-stamped from that very night, of him striking Chloe, of her falling, of him calmly, coldly going to the kitchen, taking the paring knife, and deliberately, slowly, sawing it into his own forearm while she sobbed on the floor. But there was more, so much more. Videos of the cigarette burn, videos of him screaming at her, throwing things, years of meticulous, narcissistic, psychopathic abuse, all carefully recorded and saved by the predator himself. Kendrick walked back to the interrogation room. He did not say a word. He just turned the laptop screen toward the glass. Marcus saw it. He saw the footage of himself. He saw his perfect, fabricated story evaporate. His eyes darted to the hallway. He saw Julian Thorne standing beside Kendrick, his face impassive. The realization hit him. His lawyer, his protector, his own blood. Marcus Thorne did not just crack, he detonated. He let out a scream that was not human. It was pure, primal rage. He launched himself at the table, sending it flying. "You!" he shrieked, his voice breaking. "You did this." He was pointing at Thorne. He knew everything he told me, how to hide the money he set up the accounts. He was confessing, in his blind, narcissistic rage. He was confessing to everything, trying to pull his own lawyer into the inferno with him. Agents swarmed the room, pinning him to the wall as he thrashed and screamed, admitting to wire fraud, admitting to the assault, admitting to everything in a desperate, final, pathetic attempt to not go down alone. I turned away from the glass. I did not need to see any more. I walked back to Chloe. The medic was gently bandaging a raw scrape on her wrist. Her real injuries. They were finally being seen. They were finally being recorded. I sat next to her on the hard plastic chair and, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I put my arm around my little sister. I just held her. I looked past her, through the open door, and saw the blurred motion of agents leading a man in a prison-issue jumpsuit down the hall. Marcus Thorne, the perfect predator, his empire of lies and money and pain, all turned to ash in a single night. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Please comment below and let us all know where you are listening from. I would love to connect with you and hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.